line out, back it up.
Hi everyone, I'm Ken Verderami, and welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Steel Shooter, where we talk about all things and only things Steel Challenge. Okay everybody, welcome back to the show and the start of a brand new year here in 2025. Before we jump into today's content, I want to cover some things about the channel just to get everybody calibrated for the new year. Of course, to start out, if you are interested in my dry fire training system for Steel Challenge, head on over to our website at steelshootbanners.com. You'll find all 8 stages in banner form for dry fire training there. And as well, if you happen to be a USPSA shooter, we have over 45 different USPSA training drills and 15 official classifier stages, all in banner form that you can dry fire on as well. Get your game to the next level. And if you're a Glock competition shooter, we even have the 3 official Glock GSSF sport banners in the stages in banner form as well. So you can check that out. Of course, don't forget my books. Original book, Do You Feel the Need for Speed? The current second edition called Do You Still Feel the Need for Speed? With 40 new pages, including new chapters, updated chapters, and additional drills. And my mental management book, The Game Within the Game, Mastering the Steel Challenge Game, Mental Game. These books are and continue to be the only books on the market dedicated 100% to the sport of Steel Challenge. Okay, for those of you who are regular listeners, you know that a couple months ago I decided to kind of resurrect my YouTube channel in a way, and what I'm doing now is I'm posting some of my older audio podcasts on my YouTube channel, and so trying to put up one of those a week. So there's several years of content going back there that you can check up on. Lots of interesting topics there. And also these audio-only podcasts I'm also going to post on the YouTube channel when I make them as well. So if you like to consume content on YouTube, you can certainly get that there. And the YouTube channel is called The Ultimate Steel Shooter. If you're already not familiar with it, please head on over there and like and subscribe those videos, share them if you get something out of them. It certainly helps get the word out about that content for the channel. Okay, so enough of that. Let's jump into the first topic for 2025. And what I thought I would do is want to talk about a couple of fundamental things that are critical to becoming better at Steel Challenge or any of the action shooting sports. And I'm going to relate some information from the military to try to help those of you that still may be on the fence about why this is important, to show you that it's not just a competition sport thing, but our military actually uses these same techniques. And what I'm going to relate to you is some conversations with some Special Forces operators, Navy SEALs, Deltas, and CIA ground branch kind of guys. Now, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but obviously I'm not have anything to do with those. My military experience was Air Force, right? I flew jets. I wasn't on the ground shooting guns, so I don't claim to have any of that direct action kind of experience. But because of some of the things I was doing later on in my career in the Air Force, I got to work with NSA, CIA, Delta, SEALs, those kind of people in doing some advanced projects with some of the things we were developing that we're going to be supporting their activities. So I got to talk to those guys, and we got to talking about shooting as well. And as you can imagine, these guys' shooting skills are critically important as long with everything else they learn. And so we asked them about how they go about training to become proficient shooters, since very few of them are, that level of skilled shooter before they join these organizations. And they had some interesting things to say. So one of the Navy SEALs that I talked to was talking about how they first started firearms training. And what he said was the number one thing that happened is they started with pistol training first, because as I'm sure most of you are aware, right, the special operators and tier 1 operators, they carry multiple types of weapons, but they all carry pistols as well as various types of long guns. But they all started out their training with pistols. And the reason for that is the pistol is known to be the hardest gun to learn to shoot correctly, particularly when you need to shoot at speed and you need to shoot accurately, right, which is our entire sport. And so they were always taught pistol first. And that's something that translates well to our sport, right? If you are thinking about getting into this sport and, PCC's all the rage and lots of cool guns and stuff, I would highly recommend that you start to learn the fundamentals of marksmanship with a pistol. Because if you can master the fundamentals of marksmanship with a pistol, you will find learning the fundamentals of marksmanship with every other shooting platform much easier, because those basic fundamental skills translate to all platforms. Yes, there are lots of differences as you get into it, but the fundamentals are absolutely the same, and you will be much better served by learning pistol first. So that's the first thing. You definitely want to take on and master a pistol before anything. In fact, I did the same thing. My initial interest in action shooting was 3-gun, not USPSA, not Steel Challenge. And I've talked to some people, and they recommended, hey, before you get into all that, you might want to go shoot USPSA with a pistol and make sure this is really something you want to do. And if you learn the pistol well, you'll be amazed at how much easier it is to become proficient at those other sport with other types of firearms. So think about that. And even if you're in the middle of this and you're not new, and you may be struggling at some level to get any better, you might want to put those other platforms down and just focus on your pistol marksmanship skills. And once you get those dead on, you'd be surprised how much easier it is to pick up and move on and get better with other types of weapons. Okay, the second thing that they talked about, and again, this goes on with learning pistol, but it was the same thing when they picked up the M4 that they were using, and there are other things, is that the first 2 weeks, and they're shooting every single day for long periods of time, right? The first 2 weeks of their firearms training was 100% dry fire. They didn't give them a single live round to shoot until they had spent tons of time over there, hours and hours a day, just dry firing every day for 2 solid weeks. And once instructors were confident they had learned the fundamentals correctly, only then did they give them their first bullet to put in a round and put a live round down range, okay? And so there's a really big hint in there somewhere that dry fire, as I've harped on for years and other instructors as well, is the key to become better at action shooting sports, right? Many reasons for that. Number one of them is the fact that you can't shoot enough live rounds to be proficient in a year. But the other one is what our elite operators in the military learned a long time ago, and that is that in order to get your skills as subconscious, you need to do dry fire. It is the only way that this works. Okay. In fact, one of the CIA ground branch guys that I had a chat with, he was talking about the extensiveness of the training that they go through, and in their training, they spent a lot of time with teaching you the science behind why the training methods they're about to give you work. And the reason for that is the same reason that I've been harping on for many years, and that is that if you understand why something works, then you buy into it it's not just rote memory. Oh, some guy told me that, I guess I'll do it. But you learn why dry fire works from a mental and physical standpoint. And then at that point, you are now, because of that detailed understanding of the science behind it, it makes it much easier to, if you will, buy into that this really works. It gives you the confidence that you know it's going to work, and so you stick with it when you struggle, right? We all have struggles, we all have failures as we go along with it. You don't do this perfect the first time out. And if you've never learned the science behind why these things work, you get doubt, right? And doubt says, well, maybe this is really not what's supposed to be, and you start questioning whether you're doing the right things, and you get into this vicious cycle, and you don't get anywhere. Whereas if you've been taught the science behind why all these things fundamentally are true and why they work, even when you start to have failures, you still have the confidence to know that what you're doing is correct. You just got to work through the problems, and it allows you to stay motivated and keep going. That is a huge, huge deal. It was for these operators as they're getting trained, and it's a huge deal in our sport to get better as well. In fact, one of the ground branch guys even talked about, how, that some of their training included things like I've talked about, which are how your brain actually learns new tasks, right? The concept of myelination and creating new neural pathways. Well, those are big deals, and it's not just made up kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's real, and lots of communities, including our elite operators, use these concepts to help train their people to an elite level. Right? He mentioned in one of the discussions, he goes, there's no such thing as muscle memory, right? It's learning new neural pathways. Well, I've said that for many, many years, right? You hear the term, the colloquial term, it's muscle memory. No, muscles don't have any memory. The only thing that has memory, the only cells in your body that have memory are the neurons in your brain. And that's what's creating those neural pathways. Okay? So that kind of stuff is really, really important in order to help keep you on the right path and to stay motivated. Now, I know a lot of this is not, right? These are not hard technical concepts we're going over, but this kind of foundational understanding really is important as you get into your technical training specifics and you start having issues. You continue to keep the confidence going that you're doing the right thing because you've learned that these methods, in fact, do actually work. Okay, the last concept I wanted to mention is this idea that they all mentioned that you should spend money on training, not on tools. Right? I've said this a million times. You can't buy your way into winning anything in the sport. Okay, training is the only way it's going to happen. And these guys, a lot of these guys are out of the elite services, and they've set up training companies and stuff, and they see people all the time. They show up with all this fancy gear, really nice equipment, but they don't hardly do any training, and so they don't learn anything, and so they don't know how to use this equipment. Versus the people who show up with, what I'll just call budget equipment, but have spent lots of time training and are extraordinarily proficient at it, they're much, much better shooters, even though they, quote, have inferior equipment. Okay, so again, there's a big hint in there. Now, I'm not saying don't buy good equipment. You need to buy good equipment at some level, but don't get focused on the equipment as the central issue when you're struggling. It's not your equipment, it's your training, right? If you're not getting any better, you don't need to buy new, different, or better equipment. You need to train harder. Again, that really is the message here. So don't focus on equipment. Buy some good equipment, and then forget about equipment and focus on training. Right? I had the same gun throughout my entire Steel Challenge shooting career that I had when I first bought. I never bought a different gun. Yeah, I changed pieces as they wore out, but the same Browning Buckmark that I had the first month I decided to shoot the sport is the one I had when I finished, competition shooting about 6 or 7 years later. So don't get focused on equipment. Stay focused on training only. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for this one. I did want to mention next podcast, and I may have said this last year that it was going to be this podcast. I'll apologize for that. I am going to do it for the next podcast. I'm going to talk about a topic that I'm not sure I've ever talked about. I may have talked about it once before in the last 4 or 5 years, but it's certainly not in any of my books. I kind of kept it for people who take personal instruction with me, but since I'm not really doing that anymore, I'm going to talk about here on the podcast, probably for the first time, and it's a technique that I used for being able to develop extraordinarily fast first shot to a target. And it's something I learned from arguably the greatest skeet shooter, competition skeet shooter the world has ever seen, a gentleman by the name of Todd Bender. And so I'll save that for the next podcast. Okay, and so with that, as always, remember, slowing down is never the right answer. Never. You need to learn to see that.